Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. I glue little pieces of paper to other little pieces of paper, and if that sounds good to you, you're in the right place. Make sure you hit that subscribe button to join our crafty little family, and don't forget to hit the bell as well to get notified every time we add new content. So for August, we are hosting a Crash Your Stash theme, and today we're creating these fun pockets using our stash and one additional surprise item. And so these are really fun and was super addictive to make. Once I made the first one, I made some additional ones, and had I not had other things to do that don't involve gluing paper, I probably would have been making these all day. So if you are interested in making some of these for yourself, then stick with me and we will make them together. So the inspiration for today's project is this paper pad. This is a hot buy pad from Michaels, and I know I have used it once for sure, and possibly even twice, but it is nearly untouched, and it has just lived in the closet of shame for probably over a year now, and so it's definitely time to utilize this. I was inspired to create some pockets that I could make using my envelope punch board, and so originally I thought I would just utilize that craft background and then layer my pattern papers on top of it. But when I started to put the elements on, I decided that it was too plain of a background. So I went back into this paper pad and decided that I would utilize some of these patterns. And so we're gonna use this today to create our envelope pockets. And then I'm also pulling in a couple of Prima collections. The first one is Amber Moon. And the second one is, I'm not really sure because for some reason I cut out the label. But they're very fall inspired and very warm and country. Definitely has some vintagey vibes to it. And so the thing about these Prima tablets is that you get so many pieces of each pattern. It's really kind of hard to use it up. And so I did use it many times and then put it in the closet of shame, and there it sat. So I really wanted to get those out as well. And so for the envelope itself, I'm gonna use that punch board as I mentioned, and this will create an envelope that would fit a 5 by 6.5 inch card into it. Not my cards. My cards have too much stuff on them, but this would be a standard size envelope. And so the guide here directs me to cut my paper to be 9.25 by 9.25, and then come back in and score it at 4. So I think we all have our punch boards and we know how to line those up and punch them and then score on those lines. And like I mentioned, I had originally planned for the pattern to be hidden in here, but we're gonna go ahead and use those pattern craft papers instead. Here's my envelope already punched and scored and ready to assemble, and you can see I've picked that sort of white geometric pattern on the craft background, and that works as a really pretty neutral for layering all of the paper patterns on. Now, instead of assembling this as a traditional envelope where you would leave the widest part at the top open to put your card in, I'm just going to assemble it so that the top portion would be on the narrow end. The first thing I want to do is adhere the flap for this portion to the inside of the card, and that will give it a nice finished edge. So I'm just adding my double-sided adhesive here, and I'm just gonna fold that over on the score line, and now you'll get that nice finished edge on top. So the next thing I want to do is add some adhesive to close up the sides of this envelope, and so I've put a little bit here on the point that is on the top and a little bit here on the point that would be underneath, and so this will give us 2 layers of that adhesive to be very sturdy when we close it up, and it will make sure that we don't accidentally add too much adhesive and close this envelope up. So here are those points folded over, and the last score line will become the bottom. I want to have this on the outside instead of the inside because I don't want the tag to be hitting this and causing it to get stuck. So I've just gone ahead and added my double-sided tape here as well on the outside, but not to the very bottom where it could get stuck on your tag. So let's just close that up. And I did go ahead and take my scoring tool and kind of burnish that edge so that I would have a nice crisp crease. So the next thing I want to bring in is my first layer of pattern paper, and I picked this particular tablet. It's an A4 size. It's almost 11 3/4 inches wide, and that gives me enough width to fold that over, and so I can wrap the whole pattern around this envelope. And so I have just put a little bit of tape here and here. I'll pull that now, and then we'll adhere it to the envelope. I'll bring in my scoreboard next so that I can score on those edges and get a really nice crisp fold on the side. So I don't want to overlap this portion where these flaps intersect, because that could accidentally close up the envelope. So I'm just going to rest that pattern paper along that point and then get it evened out and press that into place. So you can see I've also added some double-sided tape here. I'm going to go ahead and score this now in. So I just want to line up the edge of the envelope onto one of those grooves so that I can make a nice score line, and then shift it over enough so that I can get a full groove on this side as well. And so I'm just going to remove the backing from the tape and then wrap this around. Then I'm going to do the same for this side as well. So that is my first pattern, which will be more of a background. And I do have a layering pattern here as well. This one is going to be 3 inches high by 5 1/8. And I'm just going to center that here right along the edge. I love that plaid border on the top and the bottom. Okay, so I have decided to add a layer of my trim around as a band, and this is what I'm using today. This is a copper taffeta ribbon from Really Reasonable Ribbon, and I think it's absolutely just perfect for fall. It's a very warm, rich color, and the taffeta ribbon makes a beautiful bow. So I'll just stretch enough around there so that I can adhere it, and then we'll hide that cut edge with our next layers. So I've just secured that with a little bit of hot glue. And now I want to add my doily. So this helps to break up a little bit of that background pattern so that it will neutralize that area for our focal image. And so this is just a white doily cut from a crisp white cardstock. And then I'm going to top that with an additional pattern. So this one is a kind of a dovetail stitched edge, just for a little bit of extra detail. And my focal image came from that paper pad as well. Sometimes I struggle with these smaller images. I typically like the 3x4 size, but this works pretty well, I think, for this size of a project. And even though it is a pocket, there is so much room to add your finishing details because you can go all the way up here and all the way to the bottom. So that makes me pretty happy. Here is a flower arrangement that I created. So I pulled the colors from this pumpkin here in the image, and so these are warm colors and they're softer palette. And so I pulled a little bit of a softer orange and that ivory color, and I topped it with a center that was created with the Be Bold blooms. And I cut that with a very glittery cardstock. And then I've also got a very neutral die cut leaf and a gold twine here to coordinate. And this is just going to go right in the corner, and I'm being careful as I do not to cover up any of the words for that focal image. That really fills in the bottom very nicely. I want to balance that with some additional detail on the top corner here. So I've got a couple of little pumpkin charms on string. I'm adding those with a bit of hot glue. Then I'll cut that edge off. Here is a vintage button, and we'll just add that with a little hot glue as well. And the final detail for the front of this pocket is going to be some sequins, and I'll add those with my Tombow. So it wouldn't really be a pocket unless you had a tag or something to tuck inside of it. So I've just created this one with some additional pattern paper from that collection on a base of sturdy cardstock. So I'll just tuck that into there, and I have this coming above the top of the pocket, so it's easy to put in and out. So I think that worked really well for utilizing that craft paper that has been sitting in my stash for so long. And I absolutely love this softer kind of warm fall palette for this. And as I was working along preparing for this, I thought to myself, ooh, Christmas. So I created an additional one with a Christmas theme, and I chose the star pattern on that craft background, and this is a Minte collection. It's a couple years old, but I had just enough of it to work this out. And so you do want to consider having a piece of pattern paper that is wide enough to wrap all the way around. And so that was a good use for this. And also the tag that I put inside was actually the manufacturer branding page. They would have this where they would show you all the patterns that are included, but I think it looks absolutely stunning, and it has those beautiful nature inspired images that go along with our tree. So this time, instead of just using the cut apart, I cut it with a die that had a stitched edge tag shape, and so that really helps to kind of give it a little bit of a more unique shape and kind of cuts down on the background that would be visible. So I picked a eyelet here that coordinated and a little twine, and this is attached with spacers, so that helps to build our dimension. So here's a couple of little birdie craft flowers paired with some double head stamen from the Really Reasonable ribbon, along with some coordinated trim. And I wrapped that around here as well and finished it with charms. And once I got that done, I thought, ooh, Halloween. So then I created this one as well with that same set of measurements and the same pattern craft paper. And so this has got a fun little tag inside. I had to join some patterns for this to make it tall enough, but this was a good use of just some little scraps that I had left over. And so I decided to switch it to that black stripe. And so the funny thing about that was it was a diagonal stripe when I started, and I didn't know what to expect when the envelope was assembled, but when I had the scoring and the cropping done, it turned out that it straightened itself out, which I thought was kind of funny. So anyway, here is a Halloween one. You could do this for really any occasion, for birthday, or for summer or Easter. And I think this is just a really fun way to present a card that is similar but just a little bit different. It makes it more fun to have a tag that you can pull out, and this was definitely a great use of my stash papers. So on the topic of stash papers, I'm still waiting as patiently as I can for those collections to become available from scrapbook.com so that I can source what I need for our 13 Days of Halloween series. But until then, I am going through my stash and creating some fun cards with what I already have on hand. So I knew I wasn't going to be using this for the series, so I decided to create as many cards as I can with some of the supplies that I have on hand. And so for some of these, I decided to do a more untraditional color palette, and so instead of all black and orange, I incorporated that gray. And I did mix up different collections for this so that I could have a more unique look. And for some of my cards, I have cut the journal card down that I wanted to use as a focal image into some different sections so that I could incorporate them in my card. And for instance, this was part of a 3x4 card, and I just cut off that bottom section as a sentiment with a stitched edge banner shape so that I could layer them up in a better kind of arrangement for this card. Now for this one, I decided to utilize the die cuts as kind of a focal image, and so I've layered up some of my pattern papers here with all the borders that I like, and then the star has a different background and a tiny little tag. This one was from one of the 6x6 paper pads, and so I was able to utilize that and kind of stretch the impact of it by putting it on a layered die cut. And then I did find that funny little sticker in one of the older collections that we don't have enough of to use for the current series coming up, but it says broom hair don't care, and I thought that was pretty funny to go along with the witch. So these are flowers, the lotus flower from Really Reasonable Ribbon, and I just altered them by changing out this stamen to coordinate a little bit better. And then I've layered them with some handmade flowers. These are those poinsettias that I like to create as background layering flowers, and so that helps me to build a nice arrangement. This is a pretty bold check, and that is a chevron on twill. So these all come from Really Reasonable Ribbon. Here's another one, and I utilized 6x6 paper pad for this, so I really like the compact pattern on these. Makes a better fit, I think, for a 6x6 card. I just created that similar kind of arrangement, but this time I tucked in some gold, some black glittery leaves, and that's going to be part of my haul when I get to the Halloween series. I picked these up, but I've been using them, but I'll add those to the haul so that you can see them then. And then here is another card, and I really layered up some die cuts for this, including a spider web and an orange doily, which is not typically what I would do, and a very loved bingo card that has been in my stash for quite a while, but it needed to have a home, and so I just layered on this pumpkin image. This came from a die cut set that I got from Dollar Tree last year, but I really think that this layering of patterns and images works so well for vintagey Halloween. And then I've got my sentiment here, which was die cut with that stitched edge banner as well. And then last but not least, I have a cutie little 4x4 flip book here, and I've utilized quite a few of my focal images from those collections, and I added those to some full-size tip-in pages with the pattern papers that match. And so this was a good way to utilize some of the images that I had from previous collections. And then for each of the set of pages, I also added a little photo mat for a special photo, and that was a fun way to incorporate some additional patterns. I went through quite a lot of the stash paper for this, and so it is really pretty heavy, and this was fun to make. So this will be another project using my Crash Your Stash theme for August. So I did want to just really quickly show you the ribbons that I've picked out. This is kind of my vibe for fall. And if you're interested in my favorites video of the trims that I'm picking up to use over the holiday season, I can definitely do that, and I can add the individual links for that as well. But I'm into this warm taffeta colored ribbon, and it makes a beautiful bow, and it is just a softer, warmer vibe for the holiday. So if you're interested in a favorites video, just let me know in the comments and I will take care of that. So that is all for our project today. I made that fall pocket with the envelope punch board, and then I shared some additional projects made with my stash. So if you are enjoying this series for August, let me know in the comments below. You can find links in the description for our social media, and if you're not already, I would love for you to hit that subscribe button and join our crafty little family. Don't forget to hit that bell so you'll be notified when we add new content. And as always, I'm wishing you a happy and productive day, and I thank you so much for watching. Bye.